Alright everybody, welcome back to another Chucky video. So this week we're doing more of a discussion piece rather than one on gameplay and such. So the amazing Carnivorous, for those who don't know who she is like one of the most well-known artist mains, great Twitch streamer, YouTuber. She's on Twitter a lot. Her link and stuff will be below. She's on the podcast for our artist episode actually. Asked a lot of content creators to go out and test slugging versus hooking, which has been a very hotly debated topic as the recent weeks have gone on, as a lot of people, including myself, do see the game going into more of a slug-heavy meta for a lot of reasons. In particular, hooking just doesn't seem very beneficial most of the time. Now, I was asked to do this for Chucky for obvious reasons, so I wanted to share my thoughts on what happened, which I think is better, and how to properly slug as Chucky, because I do think there is a way. And I hate to be that guy, but it's kind of in the middle on how to do it exactly. So before we get into the results and things like that, I do want to mention that We're Gonna Live Forever, which is technically an anti-slugging perk, has been buffed in the current PTB. This video is being recorded about a week before it comes out to live, and it has not been adjusted as far as the devs are concerned. Now, what this basically means is that, will any of my opinions here change because of We're Gonna Live Forever? Not really. I think We're Gonna Live Forever is going to still be niche. We're not going to see it as often unless slugging does become meta. So just keep an eye out for that and keep it in mind with anything I'm about to say. Same with something like For the People, but even then I don't think it really affects this at all. But moving on to the data. So for the slugging side of things, it was 10 matches of slugging with a particular slug build. I'll have the build posted up right here, I suppose. So for the slug matches, I got an average of 3k kills, an average of 3 gens that got finished, and the matches were an average of 7 minutes. As far as perks that were countered, for the most part, there was not very many anti-slug perks that were countered, but a lot of anti-hook perks were. I countered a few dead hards, I countered a few deliverances, etc., etc., because the basic premise of this was to not hook until everyone was on the floor. There was also a very, very, very lot of 4%ing that happened. I actually lost a few kills because of 4%ing in-game. I used to play a lot when I was a teen. Of course there's a 4%. She can't heal. Does she 4% is my question. Nope. 4%? Nope. GG's. What? Well, GG's. It's a whole other discussion and topic. But the thing with this is that I was still able to significantly win most of my matches. The really interesting stat that we'll get into when we compare it to the hook matches, I feel, is the gen time the match time and the gen completion. For the most part, the gens didn't really reach the end game unless I was severely losing. Slugging felt extremely snowball heavy, which, no duh, but to the point of it was extremely feast or famine. Either it worked or it didn't work. Most of the time I would either get a 4K or a 1K, and that was it. There was really no in-betweens. There was very many 2Ks. 3Ks would often happen, but even then, by the time, that was from a hatch, not from the exit gates being powered and someone leaving. And the 0K I got, listen, alright, we all have rough matches. To be fair, that 0k match is actually very interesting because I was only realistically able to slug about 2 people, and one of them I slugged for so long that they didn't get the bleed out timer, but if I hit them one more time, they would have. The team did a very good job of protecting them. That's another thing I do want to note about the slugging playstyle. I did notice that a lot of the times that the slugging was only working because I don't think people know how to play against it, which is never a good thing for a strategy. But I often had people grouping up after a slug, so I would slug somebody, and then I would slug somebody else, and they would be right next to each other. Now, ideally, what most people do is once they're slugged, they start recovering on the spot and then go to the location they want to do. My advice for this is if you were playing against a killer who is clearly going for more than one slug, move away. Do not group up, because now you're giving him pressure in 2 locations. This goes for also if you're going for a hook save and you happen to get slugged right under the hook. Don't recover, just move. You need to split the killer's pressure and attention in some way, shape, or form. That's why things like tenacity can actually be very useful in very specific situations like that. It allows you to have more control over where you are faster, so the killer has to react and split the pressure more. Things I will note, there were some particular perks that did mess me up. Unbreakable wasn't one of them, which was very strange. Neither was Exponential. I saw Exponential a few times and Unbreakable a few times. Every single time Exponential was brought, while there was moments where it did lead me to sweating to finding those those boons. What I will say is, for the most part, I could snuff it before it ever became an issue. Unbreakable, however, while often touted as the best anti-slug perk in the game, didn't really do much, because most of the time I was nearby the people that were getting slugged, because once again, people would come for the saves on the slugs, they would get slugged there, and then I would have 2 people down, so they have to make the choice to get up then or wait. Most people would get up at like the very worst time, and then I would down them again, and okay, well now I don't have to deal with Unbreakable. Plot Twist was another one. I didn't see it very often, but Plot Twist is a great anti-slug perk. I don't care what anyone says. If you know you're going to go down, just go down with Plot Twist, and the killer has to make the decision to either pick you up or slug you. If their entire game plan was to slug you, it doesn't matter. Plot Twist, I think, has a lot of utility that a lot of people don't use it for. It doesn't, Jolt doesn't happen, say the best or last attacks don't happen, etc., etc. Anything that involves you getting hit by the killer, Plot Twist can stop completely. And once again, the killer has to make the decision to leave you on the ground and let you heal yourself, or to pick you up and maybe ruin their entire game plan. It also means that someone's waiting for a flashlight save, they can kind of leave you there and get the added pressure there. Moving on to the hooking stats, though. For the hooking stats, we had 3.5k average for kills, 3 gens average popped, and 9.5 minute games. So the 9.5 minute games is kind of the thing I want to focus on a little bit. That is 2.5 minutes longer than the slug perks. Now, I wasn't using anything super meta. I was using my normal build of Pain Res, Bam, Brutal, I believe. And Nowhere to Hide. So nothing like, I wasn't running like full slowdown or anything. So 9.5 minutes is pretty normal for something like that. But the contrast it had with the slugging match was it was an extra 2.5 minutes. But with that being said, as far as gen completion goes, it was also exactly the same, but there were a very few matches that ever made it to the exit gates. I will mention that. A lot of them were just 3 gens in general, and that's where it ended up getting done at. Which is an interesting takeaway. As I said earlier, the slugging playstyle was definitely more feast or famine. It didn't always work, but when it did, I was able to snowball so hard that it didn't matter. Survivors couldn't recover. Now, do I think slugging is better than hooking? No. And that's where the next bit of this comes in. How do you properly slug as Chucky? So I think, ideally speaking, if the circumstances can officially call for it, the map isn't too big, I think ideally the way you want to play Chucky to get the most out of slugging and apply the most pressure faster, because Chucky has some severe problems with map presence. His slow natural speed and slice and dice not being the best mobility tool unless certain things are happening, like pallets happen to be lined up or windows are in a certain way. He can't get around the map. So Survivors spread out, which is the case for most killers, but particularly Chucky, he can't really keep applying the pressure. Picking people up and putting them on hooks takes a lot of time, and the Survivors are safe during these moments. Essentially safe during these moments. So he can't really waste the time to hook people and get the most out of it. However, the way I would look into going about this, I think the best thing you can do with Chucky, as far as building as much pressure as you possibly can, is to down somebody. If you know someone's nearby, whether it's from Infectious Fright or some other information perk, or you just know from your macro game sense, go after the next person, down them, hook them, then go back to the slug and camp the slug. At that point, you are able to keep your momentum. You have 3 people essentially on occupied at that moment. And it lets you snowball if possibly needed on the first snowball guy, because if the other person hasn't picked them up, now you have pressure on 2 locations, one person on hook and the other person on the slug. And you can use your undetectability near the slug to maybe get a play from that. As far as add-ons and such, if you are going to go for a more slug-heavy playstyle, I highly recommend Straight Razor. I've said in the past I don't think Straight Razor is that good. That was because I was thinking about it more as a hit-and-run add-on. However, after watching Numinous, another person who's been on the podcast, for Billy, who played Chucky during the Odds and Hands showcase, I have realized the error of my ways, and Straight Razor, which I used myself during this testing, is very, very good at slugging. As if you down someone with Slice and Dice, which you should be doing, you typically have them on the ground long enough to where if someone comes up to get the heal, if it's during those 80 seconds, they can't get it immediately. This also does affect We're Gonna Live Forever, which I'd be curious to see how the numbers work once it's out. But my conclusion with this is that I don't think Chucky is that great at slugging fully. However, keeping his momentum going by keeping someone slugged to keep that momentum and the pressure as the match goes on, of course, case-by-case basis, depends on the size of the map, etc., etc. I do think that this is a decent way to play him. Now, at the end of this entire thing, the conclusion I have come to is still that I do think, while the game won't become 4 on the floor for the meta, I do think slugging in itself will become more of a strategy that is used to help killers alleviate their pressure issues. And this, I need to say right now, this isn't me advocating for changes to them. I think the changes they've done to camping and tunneling are perfectly fine. But with the changes to the anti-face camp, with base kit borrowed time, with author record and decisive strike being so common, the new blood rush coming out, deliverance being a thing, there are a lot of reasons not to hook people. That's not even counting the 70-second timer they added, reassurance being a thing, camaraderie being a thing. There's just a lot, and sabotage is getting buffed, power struggle being a thing. Pallet saves in general, flashlight saves. There's a lot that slugging lets you avoid. And it should be a tactic and not the only way to play. And obviously it's not. Hooking will still have its place as it gets people out of the match faster if done properly. But for the most part, and I hate to say this, hooking I feel is only the best strategy if you were tunneling someone immediately. That seems to be the case. There is just not enough benefits, especially base kit wise, to hooking someone versus not. And I do think that is a very, very big issue with the game that I hope is addressed at some point. I know I've said in the past I think Unbreakable in some way, shape, or form, not its base form, as I keep trying to make sure everyone knows, should be base kit. I've heard ideas to make tenacity base, I've heard ideas to make flip-flop base, etc., etc. Regardless, I do think this is the next thing that behavior needs to start addressing, is the slugging issue. Because once all 4 people are on the grounds, the killer essentially won. If they have no way to get up. There are circumstances where they might be able to make a comeback, whether it's from going to a corner to where a hook doesn't spawn, etc., and things like that. But for the most part, slugging will become a problem. I can almost guarantee it. And I do hope the devs have some way to battle it once it does become the meta, which I do think it will, especially on a lot of specific killers. That was the most interesting thing about this, was definitely seeing how the other killers fared. I thought I did terrible, even with my decent stats, because I was looking at Nurse and Hillbilly stats, and Oni and Plague, who are killers that basically thrive on slugging. So having a killer that doesn't really do that and is just good at getting those quick downs and chases, yeah, in general, it was kind of disheartening. But looking over the other stats or at some of the other killers, it wasn't just me. Basically, if a killer has an instant down ability of some kind, they're probably good at slugging. But with that, let me know what you guys think of the stats and the video and such. Carn will be releasing her video with everything. There's a questionnaire we had to do on there and things like that. And I will link that below once it's out, and I'll probably share it once it's out. Carn, if you're listening to this, I want to thank you for asking me to do this for the Chucky thing. I know it didn't originally start off killer specific, and then I think it kind of stemmed from that for some reason. But in any case, I love you guys. Have a good one, and yeah. Bye.
Subscribe, damn it. I'll be back. I always come back, and so should you, you moron.